Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Today is a busy day. I'm trying to get some stuff ready for our camping trip this weekend, but I also just have some garden things I need to tend to. I have some more weeding I need to do, but that's gonna have to wait till next week. Anyways, I'm out in the garden because I'm going to be making some quiche today, and I thought it would be a good way to use up the broccoli that I grew. I think I'm also going to bring in some Swiss chard to put in the quiche. But then also I thought I have a whole bunch of kale. I think I'm going to get some of this kale too and take it in and make kale chips. My girls really like kale chips and they're really simple to make. So I'm also going to get a bunch of that. It is normally extremely dry here, but the last, I don't know, 3-4 days we've had some rain and it's really made things grow. So now we need some heat. Hopefully the next few days we'll get a lot of sun and this will all explode. And my kale really hasn't had a lot of, we really haven't had a lot of pest problems yet. I think when it's drier and warmer, the aphids really kind of take over here. And I'm so thankful I haven't had to fight with them this year. This is my Swiss chard. I also have a lot of greens here, and I'm not really sure if we will get to them, but what I plan on doing is snipping a whole bunch of them and dehydrating them, because then I just add them to stuff that I cook through the year and it doesn't go to waste. So I decided to get some greens as well. We'll have some salad for dinner. There was just so much out there that's really good, so I decided to bring some in. So today I'm going to get a strawberry rhubarb crisp made, and banana bread that we're gonna bring on our trip, and quiche, and I'm gonna do some kale chips. Just a lot of work in the kitchen today, so let's go get started. We were house sitting for friends of ours, and they have a huge rhubarb plant, and she said I could feel free to take whatever I would use. So I thought as a thank you I would make her a strawberry rhubarb crisp, and my girls wanted to help me, but we were running short on time, so this is just a project I did for them to take over to her a little bit later. These are just store-bought strawberries. I do have strawberry plants, but they are not very productive. Maybe some year they will be, but for now we just need to buy them from the store. I'm using the food processor that I got. I really love this food processor. It's a 14-cup one, so it's really big. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. But I found that this is just such an efficient way to chop up strawberries. Then they're all the same thickness, and it was so fast. I even chopped up my rhubarb with this, and it took no time at all. Whenever I get any rhubarb, I always chop it up, put it in a Ziploc bag, and throw it in the freezer until I'm ready to do something with it. So I topped this with a bit of sugar. It's really to your taste, depending on how tart you like your rhubarb, but this is about 1/3 cup. And then in the food processor, we put about 1 cup of butter and brown sugar and oats and salt, and we just blended it together. It made the oats a little bit finer, but we found it turned out really nice. And then we baked it probably for close to an hour until it was brown around the edges and nice and bubbly. Next, it was time to use up the bananas that were going bad. If you have kids that have phases, you will have them eat a ton of bananas. Then you'll buy a bunch more and then they won't eat them. So we have all these bananas, but this is the best time to bake with bananas. They have the most sweetness to them. So if I don't have time right away, I actually just get a bag, throw them in, and freeze them. But I'm going to use a bunch of them today to make this sourdough banana bread. This is not my recipe, it's one I found online, so I'll be sure to link the recipes down below or write them out. And then with the banana peels, I've just learned that you can compost these, or you can actually turn them into fertilizer for your garden. If you soak them and ferment them in water for a few days, that becomes a really potent fertilizer. Now I'm adding the sugar, and I always add less sugar than the recipe calls for. This calls for brown sugar, and because we make our own brown sugar, I just use white sugar with some molasses right in the recipe. It works. Then we're adding some vanilla and 4 of our fresh eggs. Now this recipe has a very strange order of adding the ingredients, and at first I was a little skeptical, but after having done it, it really does work. So I'm going to add my sourdough starter that's nice and bubbly. I've heard it said that you should not use metal in your sourdough starter, but I've never had an issue with it. So if anyone knows the science behind that, leave a comment down below and let me know. Now I add the flour, baking soda, and salt. And here's where we add the oil, which makes this look very strange, but it does mix in. I usually would use butter or even coconut oil or applesauce, but I wanted to try this recipe exactly as written to see how it would work. I doubled this recipe, but I'm actually going to put it in 3 pans. 2 of these pans are my Pampered Chef stone pans, and one is just a metal pan. I buttered the inside of them so that the bread would come out easier. We decided to add walnuts to one of the pans. The timer went to check on the crisp, so we're just going to pull it out of the oven and take a peek. And it looks like it is done. And now we put the banana bread in. I like to set the timer for whatever's required. I like to set it for a little bit less so that I can check on what is baking and make sure it's not burning. So here I'm just going to set it for 30 minutes, but it probably will take about 45. After I pick my greens from the garden, I try to rinse them off in cool water as soon as I can. I used to have a salad spinner, but that was left in Morocco. So I just lay them out on a towel to dry, and then make sure to wrap them up in a towel and put them in some kind of Ziploc bag or container so that they stay fresh. The last thing we're going to make here is the quiche. I need to make 4 quiche, but I'm only going to make dough for 3 of them because I'm just going to make it not as high on the edges. I've not actually made dough in my food processor before, but I've heard this really good because if your hands aren't touching the butter, then it stays cooler longer and makes for a flakier crust. So we're going to try it and see what happens.
Gentle. If Daddy says yes, I'm going.
The reason I'm making 4 is because I'm going to make 2 for dinner and then 2 to take with us on our camping trip. I know it's not the most conventional camping food, but I think it might be the most convenient for how busy our weekend is going to be. I plan to cut this into serving size portions once it's cooked and then just freeze it to bring it with us.
Could I try it?
I'm separating the dough into 4 balls and then I'm going to roll them out. A trick that I learned a long time ago was that if you take 2 pieces of plastic wrap, or here I have this Glad stuff that I really don't like, but it's what I have. So if you take it and you roll out your dough between 2 pieces of that, it's so much easier to get it into the pie plate. And then you can just peel off the 1 layer of the wrap after. Then you don't have to add any flour either, which can dry out your pie crust.
Mama, can I have a roller, please? Can I have a roller? I want the roller first. Well, I said first. When you're done, could I have it? Yeah.
So the timer went on the banana bread, and I'm just going to take a peek and see if it's done. The top looks still a bit wet, so I think I'm just going to put it in the oven for a little bit longer. I'm forming these pie crusts just for us, so they don't have to be super fancy. So I'm just piecing any little holes I had there. I'm just piecing extra dough in there so that the bottom is for surely covered, but I'm not too concerned about the sides. And when I've done all the pie crusts, I'm actually going to refrigerate them, because if they're nice and cold, it bakes a lot nicer. So I'm checking on the banana bread again. The timer went off and it looks like it's done. It's a nice color and it's nice and golden around the edges, and there's no wet looking dough on top. When I push on it, it doesn't stick to my fingers, so I'm sure it's done. Yeah. Someone is excited about camping. Anyways, onto the kale chips. So I put all my kale in this huge bowl. I use this bowl for so many things, from making kale chips to popcorn to things out in the garden. It's just so useful around the house. And to this I added a little bit of oil and some homemade seasoning salt. And then I just mix it up, and then we add it to a pan. This pan is hot. It doesn't have to be hot to start with. It just happened to be in the oven. Can you eat it? Is it yummy? You can see it gets nice and crispy, and my kids just love to eat this. I don't have any onions, but I have onions growing in my garden and onion greens, so I think I'm just going to use that to make my quiche today. I know these aren't going to grow big. I planted them close together on purpose so I could use the greens. So I'm just going to pull one of them. Should be enough for my quiche. We like to have our vegetables sauteed a little bit before I put them in the egg mixture to add to our pie crusts. This is our broccoli that we grew. I've only successfully grown broccoli one other time, so this is pretty exciting. Every year we learn a little bit more, and hopefully eventually we'll get good at it. Growing here in north central Montana is a challenge, but it's one we're willing to take. My favorite part about this quiche recipe is it works with whatever you have. So I happen to have some Parmesan cheese and some cheddar cheese, so that's what kind of cheese we're going to use. And then I just use whatever vegetables I had in my house to also add to the quiche. This recipe calls for creme fraiche, which is something that was easily available in Morocco, but I don't always find it here. So I just use milk, and then I add a little bit of sour cream to it, and it tastes just fine. I put some salt and pepper also in, and then the one thing that sort of makes this recipe is the Dijon mustard, which I put about a tablespoon or two into this mixture. And again, you see I'm using my big bowl. I use it for so many recipes in my kitchen. I'm making 2 quiche that are just cheese, and then 2 that have the veggies and the cheese with egg mixture. All of my kids will prefer the just cheese one, but they know that if they would like more, they're welcome to have the vegetable ones. These quiche are not really full, but sometimes I get them kind of full, so I would put a baking pan underneath them to prevent any spills. And they're done.